So far, as part of our design review of your Uncanny LP site, we've covered rebranding at a basic level with name and email branding, as well as replacing the logo, setting up menus, and also some work for the footer. So it covers a lot of things that are included in the design menu for Uncanny LP, but there are some big ones that we still need to take a look at. And in this video, we're going to round it out with those. So once again, I'm going to switch to the back end of the Uncanny LP site. If I go back into the design menu to round out overall look and feel for the site, we've talked about menus and widgets and emails, but we haven't really gotten deep into the theme options, the theme customizer, and the module customizer. So I'm going to take a look at those three as they're pretty important. So theme options we did touch on earlier when we were changing the logo, as well as looking at some of what's available for social sharing and social profiles. So I'm going to very quickly cover some of what's on these different pages and why they're here and how they differ than other areas of the site. So let's take a look at what's in the general tab of theme options first. Now we've covered the logo already. We set the favicon a different way through the customizer, and that will we don't generally use this one. The other one in the customizer will override that. So we use that one. It's a little faster, and we'll take care of what's needed there. So there are some miscellaneous settings here that you generally will not use. If you are using a lot of maps on your site, you should absolutely replace the Uncanny Owl Google API key for maps with your own. There are some instructions on doing that. If you check we'll include a link in the knowledge base, but also you can check Divi documentation for how to set up your own API key for maps, and that's where this is used. So we don't use these on LP sites generally. So this I've already covered. In terms of the mailing lists, we would do that in another video and focus on what's available for the opt-ins on the site and what we use for that. So let's continue scrolling down a bit. There are some controls in here around archive pages and how many posts to show and things like that. Again, the defaults are probably fine for these things. If you are doing custom CSS on your site, so generally speaking, if it's any other WordPress site, one that is not managed by our team, then what you would generally do is create a child theme. You would set up a style.css file in there, and you'd be able to set up your own CSS that way, which you could then manage with a repository or some other tool. Because we really lock down the sites to make sure that you can't break anything, and to make sure that we can easily maintain them, we don't allow access to where you would normally have a child theme. So there's no FTP access, there's no way to edit the style.css file if you're used to that. Instead, if you do have to make changes, the theme CSS options are still available. You can use this. One option here is you could maintain the content of the file offline in some kind of tool, even a repository. Use a text editor, and then as you make changes, you can just paste them in here. We do unfortunately just restrict it that way, just again, so it's safer for us, and we can make sure that you're not changing code that could potentially break your site. This can affect the look and feel of the site, and when you get this will be empty. This is just for demo purposes. But you can make changes to that, but we just want to make sure that you do that in a safe way. There's some other tabs here as well. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. There are buttons here that you can click for additional help, how that works. In most cases, the defaults will be fine, and you'll find them sufficient. And we don't generally go in here on sites that we set up. SEO2, because we have a separate SEO tool for that, you can ignore all of these and leave all of these off. It's just going to create confusion and complication if you try to use these. We did leave them in just in case we need to override anything, or in case it is needed at some point. But generally speaking, you should only be making changes from the general tab, and even then, what you should be changing is very limited. Now, what you can change a lot more of is in the customizer. So the customizer is where you go to change the overall look and feel of your WordPress site. So when I click on the link for the customizer, then it shows me this preview on the right side and all of the different things that I can change at the theme level in here. So you can also, I'll just mention here too, as you're previewing it, like you can view it in tablet view, see what that looks like, and you can also view it in a phone view. What will this look like if someone is viewing it on a phone? And we can see how all of that works. So what I want to do is go back to the desktop view, and this is already a bit narrow. I'll mention you can see it's using the mobile view for the menus. Um, so the reason I'm using a kind of a narrower view is just because I'm recording this for a YouTube video. So I try to set it up at 720p, which is a little narrower than a lot of people are using on their desktops. Anyway, that's why it's showing the mobile menu at this point. So there are a lot of options here. There's a lot to go through. There's another spot here where you can put in custom CSS if you want to and work from it here. So if I just go through some of these, there's a lot. We already covered site identity and how you can use that for the favicon. Typography is where you can set, if you wanted, I'm not going to save my changes. You can see there is a button here for saving them. So if I did do something like change the body text size, so instead of 16, you can see how that changes as I go. It doesn't look good, but it does change. So you can make changes to these kinds of things. You can see in real time exactly what the effects are of what you're doing. We can change the header sizes that way. So it lets you play with the site and see the impact of your changes as you're making them. Let's suppose that I don't think the text is dark enough. Maybe I think it should be even darker. So let's go ahead and make this as dark as possible. You can see how that's changing. And I go ahead and save that. And maybe I want my headings to be something different. So let's say I want them to be blue instead. Well, now they're blue. So I can do that, and it's going to change all the heading styles across everything on the site. So again, what you're changing here is going to be site-wide. Let's say that I don't want those changes though. If I want to, don't want to save this, I can just refresh the page and back out what I've done, which I might do now. Let's just go back, reload it. I just want to reset what I've done in terms of my changes. So those were some basic typography changes. Within here as well, there are some other options in terms of how the site should be set up. Maybe instead of a full width, you just want it in a box or something. Maybe you're expecting people to be using it on larger devices, or you can count on them being on a desktop, and you want to make more screen real estate available for course content, like you're using a lot of videos or something. Well, let's just go ahead and make this wider then. And then we can do that, and then control exactly how that's going to work. So let me just reset that. So those are some of the examples of other things you can change. Header, we can change the style if we want. Maybe instead I want a big centered logo. Obviously this logo doesn't fit then without some CSS because it's much too large. Maybe I want menus on either side. Maybe that works better for me. Anyway, there are some options there. I could even have it slide in a bit. I'm just going to switch back to the default, but there are a lot of options there, and you can go through them and try them out and see how they work on your site. So the primary menu, of course, I'm in the mobile view, so it's not actually showing, so I can't modify that. But again, you can go into any of these things, make changes here, try them out, revert if they don't work. The key thing is really just experimenting, trying things, and seeing what works for you on your site. So there's a lot that can be modified from here. Anyway, that essentially covers the customizers in at least as much detail as I want to go in at this point. So I'm going to exit the customizer because again, there is a lot there, but it's good if you go in and try some things. You can always undo them or change them back. There are a lot of settings there that can be explored. So the last thing I wanted to talk about briefly is the module customizer. So the module customizer, when you're adding page content especially, you're going to be using something called Divi Builder in most cases. And what you can do is if you're using Divi Builder elements, and you'll see that like a lot of these things are Builder elements that you'll find and potentially use in your designs, your page designs. So if you happen to be using some of those Divi elements that are part of the builder, then you can make customizations to them here if you want to change them on like a global basis for these elements. So for any of these things, like if you're using an image, then you can control, like at a global level, how do we want it to appear. So again, this is not something we generally use on most of the sites we're setting up with LP, but if you want that level of control and customization, if things don't work out of the box, you can absolutely go into those. And finally, the layout library. So once again, when you are using the Divi Builder on pages, we try to make it as easy as possible by adding in just over 100 sample module types. So basically what this means is you can go and create a new page and you can almost load a template with some pre-built layout and different Divi elements. And then instead of having to build that on your own, you've got one that someone else has designed. You just need to drop in your content. So we will get to examples when we're actually building pages, but for now, in terms of showing the layout library, you can see some of the ones that are available here. I'm just going to go to the next page too. So what I'm going to show is, let's go into a sample landing page. So if I edit this, I'll show you how this is made up of different elements and how it can be customized then. And again, doing this, like editing the layout from the layout editor this way, lets you change it globally. So if you know you want things a certain way and you're reusing it across a lot of pages, you can go into the layout library, modify whatever you need to modify, and then whenever you're adding that again, then you're able to leverage what you've set up essentially as a template. So there's no preview of this. You would really have to set it up on a page to see what this looks like. But essentially, these are the modules, and so it's set it up with different text elements. So if I go into edit one of them, we can see what's set up there. So right now there's just some kind of quick heading there, and beneath that we've got some additional text. This one, I haven't examined it, but I'm guessing that there might be some kind of background image here that stands out. We can see there's a lot of padding around it. So we will get into some of these things. There's a lot that you can modify and set up exactly the way you want it. So here we can see that there is in fact a background image. So what I was looking at before, those other text elements are over top of this background image then that's set up for the module itself. So module, row, and element within that. So, or actual modules, sorry. So let's scroll down. You can see there's a lot of elements that go into this page. A lot of them you can see have two columns, and there are a lot of different things. So if you were doing something on your own, I'll cover this again in the page, like when we're actually creating pages. But if we were changing this, what is essentially a template, like you could just click X here if you don't want that. You know you won't want it for any of the instances where you're using this layout. You can delete whatever you want, add whatever you want, make changes if you know it's going to be consistent across everything. Then you could make the change here so that whenever you're applying it, it's already got those changes in there. So this is essentially a pre-built landing page template. Then you can just go in and make changes to it. And from the layout library, you can change what we've set up as the defaults. So essentially the templates. Anyway, that essentially covers what we wanted to introduce as far as customizing the LP site at a global design level, what we wanted to cover for that. So hopefully this was helpful. This does essentially conclude what we wanted to cover in Get Started and in terms of global design elements. Hopefully it's helpful, and try these things out on your LP site. The best way to really understand what they can do and what's possible is to try it out on your site.